The dust settled over the empty highway as a convoy of trucks rolled steadily forward, unaware of the deadly ambush lying in wait. Armed cartel gunmen emerged onto the road, rifles raised, their intent unmistakable. But what they didn't realize, one of those truckers wasn't just any ordinary driver. He was something far more dangerous. Before we continue, have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand your ground against overwhelming odds? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget, like and subscribe for more intense tales. The sun hung low over the Mexican desert, casting long, eerie shadows over the endless stretch of asphalt. The convoy of semi-trucks rumbled along the isolated highway, their massive frames kicking up golden dust in the fading light. At the front, a gleaming white Peterbilt led the way. Behind the wheel, Jack Callaway, a veteran trucker with graying hair, a thick beard, and a past most wouldn't even imagine by looking at him. Jack had spent decades on the road, running routes through some of the most treacherous parts of North America. He'd seen it all: thieves, corrupt cops, desperate hitchhikers, but nothing rattled him anymore. He wasn't just a trucker. He was a man who had lived a dozen lives before settling into the driver's seat. A former Marine, a survivalist, and someone who knew exactly how to handle himself when things went sideways. Tonight, Jack was leading a convoy of 3 trucks carrying high-value cargo, medical supplies, industrial equipment, and, most importantly, a shipment of rare auto parts bound for the U.S. The client had warned them about cartel activity along the route. But Jack? He wasn't worried. He'd been through worse. The CB radio crackled to life. "Hey Jack, you seein' what I'm seein' up ahead?" It was Reggie, another trucker in the convoy. Jack squinted through the windshield. In the distance, a cloud of dust rose into the air, a telltale sign of multiple vehicles blocking the road. His grip on the wheel tightened. "I see it," Jack responded. "Slow it down but keep rolling. We don't stop unless we have to." The convoy gradually reduced speed as they neared the blockade. Jack's instincts told him this was no routine checkpoint. The closer they got, the clearer the silhouettes became. Armed men standing in the middle of the road, their black-clad figures framed against the fiery horizon. Cartel. A dozen, maybe more. Some carried rifles. Others, pistols. A few had bandoliers of ammunition strapped across their chests. Heavily armed, well-prepared, and absolutely certain of what they were doing. A barricade of rusted-out cars had been positioned across the road, making passage impossible without stopping. Jack exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He flicked on the CB radio again. "Reggie, Clyde, keep your heads on a swivel. This ain't a routine stop." Reggie cursed under his breath. "Damn it, Jack, what's the move?" Jack checked the pistol tucked under his seat. "We stay calm. No sudden moves. Let me do the talking." The trucks came to a halt. The cartel gunmen spread out, moving with purpose. Jack spotted their leader immediately, an older man with a deep scar running across his cheek, striding toward his door. Jack knew one thing for certain. These men weren't just after a bribe. They were out for blood. Jack Callaway kept his hands on the wheel, his sharp eyes locked on the armed men closing in. The desert air was thick with tension as the gunmen fanned out, surrounding the convoy. Their leader, the scar-faced man clad in a black tactical vest, approached Jack's door with a chilling sense of authority. His men stood ready, fingers twitching near their triggers. Jack cracked the window just enough to hear the man's voice. "You've picked the wrong road, amigo," the leader said, his accented English laced with quiet menace. "This is cartel territory. You don't pass unless we say so." Jack clenched his jaw but forced a small, easygoing smile. "We're just truckers, friend," he said. "Medical supplies and auto parts, headed for the States. No trouble. No problems." The man smirked, glancing at his men. "No trouble? That depends. We take what we want, and you go free. Sound fair?" The CB radio murmured with nervous voices from the other truckers. Jack could hear their unease. But he knew the truth. This wasn't just about the cargo. If they gave up their load, they'd be stranded in the middle of the desert if they were lucky. If they weren't, they'd be buried in it. Jack took a slow breath. Look, he said evenly. We both know how this plays out. We hand over the cargo. Maybe you let us live. Or maybe you don't. Either way, we lose. The leader's smirk disappeared. He stepped closer, resting a gloved hand on the door. That's a dangerous way to think, viejo. His fingers tightened. And in that moment, Jack knew. It was about to get real. Boots tapped against the metal step. Step out of the truck. Jack didn't move. His mind was already calculating the odds. At least 15 gunmen, positioned strategically around the convoy. 2 were prying open Reggie's trailer. 4 more had surrounded Clyde's rig. They were boxed and outgunned, outnumbered. But Jack had one advantage. They thought they were dealing with ordinary truckers. All right, Jack finally said, lifting his hands. I'll step out. Slowly, he unbuckled his seatbelt, pushed the door open, and stepped down, his boots landing firm in the dirt. The leader smirked. Good choice, old man. Jack nodded, his posture relaxed. Yeah, he muttered. Except for one thing. Before the man could react, Jack's left hand shot out, clamping onto the cartel leader's wrist, twisting it with bone-crushing force. A scream tore from the man's throat as his gun clattered to the ground. Jack moved fast. Faster than any of them expected. In one swift motion, he yanked the leader forward, spinning him around, using him as a human shield. The gunmen hesitated. Their rifles, now aimed at their own boss. Jack's voice was a low growl. We're doing this my way. The cartel had made their first mistake. The tension around the convoy thickened. The gunmen wavered, fingers twitching near their triggers, eyes darting between each other. Jack's grip was iron, his forearm locked around the leader's throat. The man thrashed, clawing at Jack's arm, but it was useless. Back up, Jack ordered, his voice eerily calm. Unless you want your boss here with a snapped neck. Nervous glances were exchanged. These men were killers. They were used to intimidation. But this was something else. Jack wasn't some trucker begging for his life. He was a man who had seen worse than them and survived. Shoot him, one of the gunmen barked. Jack smirked. Go ahead. You put a bullet in me, and your boss here won't be breathing by the time I hit the ground. The leader gasped for air, his voice hoarse. Hold your fire. Hold your fire. Jack took slow, measured steps backward, dragging the man with him. His eyes flicked toward the other truckers, Reggie, Clyde, and the rest. They were watching, waiting. They knew Jack well enough to recognize the shift. This wasn't just survival. This was a calculated move. Reggie's voice crackled through Jack's earpiece. Jack, what's the play here? Jack's voice was steady. We're about to turn the tables. Get ready. The cartel leader wheezed, trying to catch his breath. His voice was strained but defiant. You think this ends here, viejo? You think you can just walk away? Jack leaned in, his grip tightening, just enough to make the man choke. I don't walk away, he whispered. I finish what I start. And with that, Jack shoved the cartel leader forward, straight into one of his own men. That split second of confusion was all the truckers needed. Gunfire erupted. Jack dove behind a truck, rolling into cover as bullets shredded through the dust-filled air. The truckers were already prepared. Reggie's shotgun roared. Clyde pulled his pistol. The others followed suit. They weren't just truckers. They were men who had seen combat before. The cartel gunmen, caught off guard, scrambled for cover. Some dove behind their own vehicles. Others fired blindly into the convoy, uncertain where the next attack would come from. Jack reloaded, his mind razor-sharp. This wasn't just about getting out alive. This was about sending a message. The cartel had made a mistake stopping them. And now they were going to pay the price. Bullets ripped through the dry desert air as chaos erupted. Dust clouds billowed from the gravel road, mixing with the muzzle flashes and shouting voices. The roar of engines. The distant wail of sirens. It all blended into a storm of violence. But Jack wasn't just thinking about survival. He was planning his next move. He had spent years in the military training for moments like this. The cartel gunmen were aggressive, but undisciplined. They relied on brute force. Fear. Intimidation. That was their weakness. And Jack knew exactly how to turn this fight on its head. Then, suddenly, the cartel leader barked an order in Spanish. The gunfire stopped. Silence. The only sound left was the low rumble of truck engines idling in the heavy desert air.